What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I'm going to be breaking down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of tickers out there. I'm going to break down what news came out that helped the market pump the way it did, and what news is coming out for tomorrow as we have the GDP numbers, what the news is saying about Tesla, and what the data is suggesting for the stock for tomorrow and beyond. But before I break anything down about all of this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks plus a $50 cash reward. And the offer ends in just 2 days. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that I have another channel that came out. This is my stock news channel about Tesla, where I primarily talk about Tesla's news. On this channel, I do talk about the news affecting Tesla, but usually it's very brief because I have so many other things to talk about. I don't really want to talk for a whole 30 minutes per video. So for that reason, I made another channel where I primarily talk about the news involving Tesla and Elon Musk. I think a lot of people were requesting for me to do something like this. So if you want to check it out, the link is going to be down below in the description and also in the comments section. Anyways, now let's talk about the market. Let's talk about how on earth the charts are looking. But honestly, guys, there's only one word to describe the charts, and that is bullish. Most of the charts are looking very bullish right now after this monstrous pump we saw today. I'm not saying we're just going to pump all day tomorrow again. The market could cool off just a little bit in the morning, but overall, right? Overall, eventually the bulls are going to be buying it back up, in my opinion. And the overall trend on Tesla, on SPY, on Nvidia so far for the next few days is looking more bullish. I'm going to break down exactly why that is. So the first thing to remember is that we had this data that came out first, the JOLTS job openings. This was significantly lower than expected. We only had 8.8 million job openings versus the 9.57 million forecast. And the reason why this was good news is because the Fed was telling us that when the job openings come out, they want a weaker labor market. They want less jobs. For now, they want there to be some pain so that we slow down inflation. Now, that's just their interpretation. There are many different factors that affect inflation, from looking at monetary policy to supply chains, and the list goes on. But for now, the Fed was looking at this, and we got exactly what the Fed was looking for. We got lower than expected job openings. This is good news for the markets, and the market liked this initially. And then what happened was, as time went on, Apple announced something huge, that they have a new launch event for September 12th, and just about 2 weeks from now. And they may be releasing the iPhone 15. That's going to be huge news for them. Now, during events like this, I can't promise anything, but what typically happens is Apple has a tendency of pumping approaching the event in a buy the rumor, sell the news kind of event. And then once the event is out, once the news is out, it tends to sell off typically. That's what happens like the large majority of the time. So there's a high probability of something like that happening. But as we approach this event, Apple is likely going to uptrend. It's going to hold up very nicely. And I do expect some decent price action. And this alone is pretty good for the markets. The market's liking it as well. I think Apple is going to be leading the way up, and I think Apple is going to play a big role in why the market is holding up and why I think it's going to continue to hold up. Now, let me just mention that for today, we had the JOLTS job openings, but for tomorrow, we do have some more data coming out in the morning. 1 hour before the market opens at 8:30 a.m. New York time or Eastern time, we have the GDP numbers coming out. All of these GDP numbers right here are going to be very important. This may cause the market to either gap up or gap down, so it's going to be very telling for how the market ends up opening. I'm going to be around to report this, so that's going to be important. And then after that, 30 minutes after the market opens, we have the pending new home sales data. So this is going to be at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. This could cause some volatility, but nothing as big as like the GDP numbers or the JOLTS. So besides that, there's nothing else coming for the data for the markets for tomorrow. But then don't forget that for Thursday, we have the PCE data coming out. This is going to be a very important inflationary measure. And then for Friday, we have the big numbers coming out for the unemployment rate and things like that. So that's going to be important. Friday is the unemployment day. Thursday is going to be the inflation day, as we have PCE coming out for July. And then tomorrow, we just have some GDP numbers in the morning. And besides that, there's not really anything else that's too big. So just be prepared for that. 1 hour before the market opens, we could see the market be affected right before we open. And then overall, the market will continue the way it moves. For earnings, just as a reminder, we have a couple of others. We have just a few others like CRWD. I have a friend that's trading this one right now. We have Salesforce and just a few others like Chewy. This is all going to be for tomorrow after the market closes. Then we also have just a few others beforehand. It's all going to be very, very telling. I think we have some AI companies as well for tomorrow. So we'll have to wait and see how this goes. This could have an effect on Nvidia, especially approaching these events. But for Thursday, right, we have Dollar Tree and just a few others. We have Dell, which is going to be the big one for Thursday. And besides that, that's pretty much it for earnings. There's nothing else coming out for Friday that's significant. And earnings is about to conclude for this season. So very interesting stuff. As far as Tesla goes, we have a couple of news that came out. There was an experiment that was done that found that Tesla's battery longevity is not necessarily affected by the frequent supercharging. That's some good news for Tesla investors. Right here, it was found that many people believe that if you keep charging the Tesla over and over and over again, it's going to have a very bad effect on the battery. Now, this was only tested for a matter of about 2,000 days based off data they had, based off the power in the batteries and etc. And what they found is that there's little to no difference in battery degradation between the frequent fast charging and the rare fast charging. Now, this doesn't guarantee anything because this was only done like over a period of about 2,000 days. If you're using the Teslas for longer periods of time, it could change. But the thing is, they lose only about 12% of their like battery overall power after about 2,000. Sorry, 200,000. Sorry about that, guys. 200,000 miles is when they lose about 12% of their power, which is still like not that bad. But besides that, in the most recent update, they found it's just a very, very small difference, and it's still they maintain their power very well over long periods of time. So it's a good sign for Teslas, for many Tesla investors who are interested in buying the cars or etc. And then there's something else that's going on with the NHTSA. They're very concerned about Tesla's new developments, and they're basically coming out with more and more scrutiny against Tesla about their new driver assistance system, the Autopilot. They mentioned the fact that it's very easy for drivers to just take off their hands and then just get very distracted. And they've been charging Tesla fines every single day if they, didn't give it a very, very strong response. Tesla has responded, however, so I think the fines have stopped at least temporarily. And they're basically telling Tesla that they have to do a better job at keeping drivers engaged, because if you could remove your hands, this could become a safety concern as they don't fully trust the autopilot technology. They're continuing to investigate with many different probes and things like that. So we're just going to be watching to see if anything ends up happening. For now, the regulators are continuing to just, scrutinize Tesla, be very, very stringent when it comes to their regulations. And we'll have to see if anything else happens, though. We're just waiting for Tesla's response to this. We're going to see if more investigations lead to anything big, but they have changed the way in which they're looking at Tesla, and they've demanded that Tesla has new features to maybe like suspend the FSD for some drivers and do other things like that. Anyways, when it comes to other things going on with inventory levels, the Model S inventory levels are maintaining this high state. So are the Ys and so are the Xs, but the Model 3s are not that bad. They're still at relatively low inventory. They're very popular in Germany and many European countries, which is pretty good for them. But globally, their overall inventory stats are still showing signs that the backlog is still existent and there's a slowdown in demand, especially in China right now. And if you look at NIO's earnings, there was actually a sign of that today. So amidst all of these things that are going on, I mean, this is not great news for any Tesla investors, at least for the time being. This could change as time goes on, but right now it's looking like the overall backlog is just getting bigger and bigger, and their inventory levels are continuing to increase. So this is what happens during recessionary environments, or if the market is getting ready for a very low demand environment. This is hurting Tesla from a macroeconomic environment, and there's still more signs of this today. I hope this changes, but for now, we just have to accept the reality of the situation. For volume, we got 133 million in volume. The volume is back. The buyers are back. Very strong volume. That's more than 33% higher than the average volume we saw from the past. And despite that, the short volume did go up just a little bit, but it wasn't really that horrible. We are seeing a little bit more shorting on Tesla, but it's not like too bad. It's still very close to the 50% range. Tesla is not performing equally with the markets. In fact, it's outperforming the market, in my opinion, and it's continuing to see an increasing price-price ratio, which tells us that Tesla is gaining some more relative strength. Looking at the seasonality, we tend to be green about 51% of the time on Tuesdays. It's basically like a coin flip. Nothing too crazy. Looking at Wednesdays, however, we're green only about 48% of the time. So we'll see if this affects Tesla to some extent. However, looking at the daily, it's looking pretty strong despite these developments. Now, when it comes to the seasonality of Tesla, this is basically at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern time, if there's any confusion about this. 11 a.m. and also around, this is going to be around like 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, we tend to see a lot more volatility in the stock. Those are some of the most volatile hours. So it usually performs really well during like the third hour of the day. We'll see if that ends up being the case again. But if anything, Tesla started to run very quickly after the data dropped. So that could be the case if there's more data in the future. But for now, that's what tends to happen when there isn't data or like external factors. Now, as far as Tesla goes, the short interest has been a little flat at 30 million. At 30 million, it may go up a little bit once this updates for Monday. We saw a little bit more shorting on Tesla, and Tesla ended up pumping. So that tells me that maybe Tesla saw lots of short covering today as Tesla broke some critical levels. And I warned you guys in my earlier videos that if Tesla broke 245, this thing could start pushing a lot more. So how are the charts looking? I'm not going to use TradingView today because the charts are so simple. If you look at the charts, we got a bullish cross on the PPO on Tesla, and we're really starting to expand with bullish momentum. And this is because of Aapl and how the whole market is pumping. Tesla looks more bullish. We're expecting a very nice uptrend right now. I do believe Tesla may pull back just a little bit to cool off on the RSI. Could get a very small either like gap down depending on the GDP numbers, or it cools off in the morning just a little bit, retests around like 255 to 253, and then Tesla may just start pumping even more and start going and going and going. We could see Tesla make its way all the way up to about 260. If that breaks 265 is on the table for this stock, then 268. I would say 265 is very, very possible and realistic for the next couple of days. I think Tesla has the potential to get there. It could cool off just a little bit initially because it is due for a slight cool off because of the RSI is very overbought. That's like what tends to happen. And we're about to get like a bearish cross in the PPO. So it looks like the odds favorite, it kind of like gapping down just a little bit, cooling off just a bit, coming back to like 250 to 255, all the way down to that level, then getting a bounce after that, and then trying to continue to push all the way back to like 260. Breaking that, then we could see like 262, 265, and high levels like 268. I think it's going to cool off first and start pushing for higher levels. But nonetheless, even if it does cool off, I'm still bullish overall. Just looking at the daily chart, that is very evident. The daily candle is also very strong, which tells me Tesla should see some more potential. Now, here's what's driving the market, or at least playing a very big role. The answer is Aapl. If you look at Aapl, we have a nice cup and handle, a nice inverse head and shoulders structure, and we have this unfilled gap all the way up to about this 190 area. We got this bullish cross on the PPO right here on the daily MACD. And why is that significant? If you zoom out of the charts, every time we get a bullish cross on the MACD, and this is like with good momentum, we tend to see Aapl run quite a bit, and this tends to push the market up. We saw this thing run like $20 right here, another like $30 here, and just continues to push up higher and higher and higher, gaining more and more points, looking very, very bullish. So like right here, for example, the last time this happened, Aapl was in like the 170s, went all the way up to about 194 after we got the bullish cross, and it just continued to go up. And it looks like the odds greatly favor that as well. So this unfilled gap tells me it's going to try to get back to the 190s very soon. It could cool off a little bit tomorrow morning, right? Retest like 182.5 to 183, retest that zone and then start continuing to push. I think it's going to test 185 very, very soon. If it breaks, then it's going to be pushing for 190 over the next couple of trading days, if not by next week. It looks more bullish overall. The structure is looking very strong, and I think this is going to drag the market up. So remember the facts that Aapl has a gap. Well, also SPY has a gap as well. So does SPX. We're about to get a bullish cross on the PPO. We're about to turn bullish on the MACD. And then on top of this, on top of this, we have a bullish looking daily candle. It looks bullish, right? A very, very strong uptrend. Now we could come down a little bit, retest 448. That's what TA is suggesting. Not a guarantee though, but it could just cool off depending on the GDP numbers. Then it's going to start continuing to push. And we have this gap just like Aapl. We have a gap up at about 456. I predict SPY is going to fill that gap over the next couple of trading days, if not by next week, for an overall uptrend that's going to be respected. It could cool off a little bit, but I think it's going to just start pushing for at least 451 plus tomorrow. I think the odds are going to favor more and more upside, and eventually this gap to get filled. That's where I'm leaning towards for SPY. Now, with SPY pushing like this, right, it could cool off a little bit first in the morning or gap down first before getting bought up by the bulls, and the bulls have a big edge. Another thing is we have this change in market structure. Our low was 433, then our second low was 435 when Jerome Powell was speaking, and since then we're making new highs and higher lows. So the trend is looking more bullish. The odds do favor more upside. Could cool off a little bit in the morning, then start pushing from there. I think the market's going to follow this trend. Same thing with the triple Q. We have a gap all the way up here where my cursor is at about 382. I think the QQQ is going to fill that gap eventually. We could cool off a little bit, retest this 372 zone because this is where the previous high was, where the breakout area was. We could retest that, then start just continuing to push. And I think it's going to break 376 over the next day or two. It looks bullish on the MACD. The PPO looks bullish. It looks like it's going to start pushing even more. So it could cool off a little bit first, right? That's going to be completely normal for the RSI. Then just continue going and start pushing into the 376s, the 377s, and beyond for the next couple of days. It looks more bullish. Nvidia also looks more bullish because on the 30 minutes time frame, we have a nice inverse head and shoulder structure right here. And then what's good about Nvidia would be what I called out earlier. I was talking about how this market structure was bearish initially, right? We had this low that was made here, the lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. Then we made this low right here before getting a nice bounce. We broke the high, which was the sign. I told you all I wanted to see this thing retest the low, then start to bounce. And that's what happened. We tested this low at 467. Then we started pushing for 490, which is a very, very good sign. So now we have this nice inverse head and shoulders accumulation structure. It looks like it could cool off a little bit to retest like 483 or so, then bounce and start pushing towards that 500 level. That is my target for Nvidia. I think it's going to approach that for the next couple of trading days as long as we continue to maintain this uptrend. So it looks more bullish overall. I think this is looking great, and I do believe the bulls have the edge. It could cool off first to about a retest of like 483 to 480, maybe a little lower could come. Then after that, it could bounce and start pushing even higher. IWM, the Russell 2000, also looks more bullish. You can see this on the 30 minutes time frame. It's going to cool off first to retest 187.5 or so, and then try to continue going, because on the daily chart, it's just like SPY about to get that bullish cross on the PPO as this thing gets dragged upwards. Watch it break above 190. If it gets that break, it's going to start pushing for even higher levels, such as 192.5. We have this unfilled gap at 197. I'm not going to count on that just yet. At least 195 should come first. But for now, it looks more bullish, looks pretty good. The odds do favor more upside nonetheless. AMD looks more bullish. We were talking about this thing potentially bouncing off our 200 EMA. We're about to get a bullish cross on the PPO. And we're going to be watching this thing maybe cool off a little bit first and start pushing for 107 plus. I'm just going to go over a couple of others real quick. Let's just talk about Netflix. Same thing. I'm going to be watching it retest 426, then try to bounce off that and start pushing for 437 plus. That's a real possibility on the Netflix chart. It still looks more bullish overall. The NASDAQ and SPX is the same thing. They have these unfilled gaps up above. Could cool off a little bit first and start pushing for higher levels with a nice cup and handle like structure. Looks more bullish. Overall, the NASDAQ is looking more bullish. So is SPX. We have this unfilled gap up above. Same thing with SPY. So it's all looking very much the same. Could cool off to retest 4460, then just start pushing even higher. I think 4460 is a stretch. Maybe 4480 or so could be retested before it tries to bounce. Still looks more bullish. The VIX is looking bearish. We have a nice head and shoulders like structure. We have this unfilled gap all the way down to this like 13, into the 13s basically. We haven't really filled the gap just yet. And this trend, if you look at the MACD, very, very bearish trend, which is because of the market pushing. So another signal is suggesting that the dollar is also looking kind of bearish. We got a bearish cross on the PPO. We're also gaining more bearish momentum. It's approaching the lower 103s, which is a good sign as we have this imbalance right here. Coinbase looks more bullish. We're going to be watching this thing retest about 82. Then try to bounce off that and just try to continue push to 90 plus. That seems very probable. Same thing with Google. Could retest 132.5 to about 134, the entire zone. Then just try to continue to go. It's about 138, then potentially 140. It looks more bullish on the 4-hour time frame nonetheless. Still looks quite good. Same thing with Amazon. Looks more bullish. We have this bullish cross on the PPO. We also have these imbalances up here, which are going to be acting as magnets, right? It could come down to retest 133.8 to 134. Bounce off that, then start pushing towards these imbalances at 136.5 should come after that. So a little drop, then a push up. The trend looks more bullish. Meta reached our target of 298 from yesterday. It looks more bullish as well, especially on the daily chart. You can see this thing is just about to get a bullish cross on the PPO. So I'm thinking it could retest, 295 or so, then bounce off that and start pushing for 305 plus. It looks more bullish to me for the time being. So the market's looking pretty good now. We got this big change thanks to Apple. Apple was leading the way up, and now this market structure should affect the whole market in a very nice ripple effect. Tesla's being affected too. Could come down just a little bit to retest, 255, even like 252 could even be retested. Just a little bit of a drop before this thing bounces and starts pushing very nicely. And we're going to be watching this thing get very close to 260. If it breaks that, 262 to 265 become possibilities. And I believe that's going to be very probable for the next couple of days. So I'm leaning more bullish on Tesla. Look for a small little drop to cool off the RSI, then another push. I think it's going to break 260 by tomorrow, very, very likely. Looking at the MACD looks quite nice. So with that said, I thank you all so much for listening. Have an absolutely spectacular rest of the day. Remain calm, cool, and collected. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Tesla to the moon, and peace out.